Hiya then folks, welcome to Boating on a Budget with me, the tight Yorkshireman, here on our Project Narrowboat, Leander Lady. You'll notice Dawn's not with me at the minute, she's at work, but what we're about to start is going to take a few days, so fingers crossed, Dawn will be able to join me later on, give me a hand, help me out, or more to the point, she can actually show me what I should be doing, and maybe make a brew and a bacon sandwich along the way. But we'll see about that. So what are we doing today? Well, basically, we're hoping to transform all this side and right down, including that bit of cupboard at the end there, into something that actually looks like a home, not a builder's yard. There's going to be various steps along the way. Things like, first off, we're going to have to set the clock down. We're also going to have to chop off these nuts and bolts that are holding the windows in so they're not sticking out. We need to take down this USB that I popped on the other week so that we've got somewhere at least to charge us phones while we're working. We're then going to need to add additional framework both inside and outside of these so we've got somewhere to screw the boards on. We've got to trim it all up so it looks nice once we've done that. And we've got that cupboard to sort out because down this end we need to make sure that we've got enough space to fit a boiler onto the wall so that we can get hot water. There's a fair bit of work to do then, so I better get cracking. Clock down, let's get these bolts chopped. You'll see I've put my hoodie on, that's for the long sleeves, because when these start to get cut, the sparks come off. And I don't want burns on my arm. I've also got my glasses on and my ear defenders, so I hope I'm not shouting. I've got that to do about 75 times. I don't think you need to watch me do them all, do you? That's all these cut flush. Apart from I've just realised I've not done the ones around that round window there. I'll do them in a minute. Next job though is to cut a load of timber to the same thickness as this because we're going to need to frame out around things like that and into these gaps here ready for putting the board on. So I'm going to need a fair bit that's cut to the same thickness as that, which off the top of my head I seem to think was 30mm, but I'm not 100% certain, so I'll measure it and then we'll set the table saw up and start cutting some timber. Set the saw up to 30mm, old scrap of wood, just done a test cut and then check that's right. Happy the saw's set up right, let's cut a few lengths. Now we've got them cut to that 30mm, we need to cut some to the right lengths, but then also this is where it's going to start getting a bit tricky and it's going to fry my brain. Because some of them we're going to have to notch out to fit round other pieces of timber in there, and some we're going to have to split across the other dimension to fit them into the gaps that are left. You'll see that much easier when we get back in there. So I've cut a couple to length. We'll go back inside. Might even take a broom with me. Deep breath then, and I'll try and explain this. I must say, we generally don't record things more than once. We just record it, and however it comes out is what you see. But I'm trying to explain how this is all going to work, and I'm just confusing myself as I'm doing it. So this is actually about take 5 of doing this. Let's hope that we can get it right. In essence, that piece of timber is going across there. It's obviously going to need to be notched out there and there so that it can sit into place. What we're needing to make sure is we leave 18mm from the bottom of that window frame to the top of this piece of wood. That's because we're going to have a piece of trim that's going to go all the way around the window, a piece of timber similar to this that's 18mm thick. Therefore we need that spacing to make sure we can put that in afterwards. The tricky thing that we've got is, like I say, on this one I need to notch out there and then line it up. On the sides we're kind of only looking, we've got 30mm already, so I'm then going to have to trim these down to about sort of 12mm when they're screwed onto the sides. It's all going to be a bit fiddly, but the idea is then when the plywood sheet goes on the front, with the cutout for the window obviously, then that piece of trim goes in, it's all going to look brilliant. So I think take number 5 there worked. I think I've explained it best I can. First off then, let's notch these out so that that'll fit into place there. Notches cut out then, so that'll now sit basically into place where it needs to be, with that 18mm gap from the top of that to the bottom of the window frame, which, like I say, just using this rough offcut, you can just see what I mean by there'll be a piece of trim all the way around just to smarten it all up once it's done. It's really now just a case of me sort of getting my head on and just cutting all these various pieces to the right widths and dimensions, getting them all fastened on. There's things like odd bits of grip fill or whatever that's got in the way over time. That's just going to need scraping off. Because the more accurate we do this, the better the overall look's going to be. So this is where the devil really is in the detail. Take us time, cut them all nice and accurate, get them all on there, and then we'll get the plywood out. Progress definitely is slow and steady then. This is the first one done, and in reality that's took best part of a couple of hours from start to finish. Sort of getting these timbers cut to the right thicknesses and depths and the right angles and then fastened on correctly so it is leaving that 18mm. It is obviously quite time consuming. That's the first one done though. We've got 2 more to do exactly like that, just down there. And we've got this one to do, which is a little bit more straightforward because we just need to add sides, top and bottom. Not so much of the fiddly stuff on that. I've covered this over with a towel though, because I need to chop these off, and again we don't want any of the sparks damaging the worktop or the sinks and things that we've already fitted. So I'll get them cut off, this one framed out, them other 2 framed out, and then it's time to start looking at getting some plywood on. In fact, no it's not, because I just noticed out the corner of my eye as I said it, we've got this cupboard to deal with. We're going to have to sort of clear all this out, move all that out the way so that we can frame that corner. It's never ending. A few hours later then, and at first glance it doesn't really look like I've been doing much, but there are all those additional pieces of timber in there that have had to be cut at some funny angles and lined up and screwed in place, etc. For example, the ones in the centre there, and all the way down to more or less where that fire extinguisher is the section that I've done. So the next part of this job really is to clear all this corner out. I'm going to have to move kind of all the electric switches, that inverter, the charge controller and some of that timber and the box work, so that we can actually get down to board this section out as needed. I think best thing to do then is grab a few tools and just get cracking, see how it goes. On previous videos we have shown this back section of the boat on the outside was obviously added later on after the boat was built. Originally it looks like the boat would have had a slope in rear and the doors were kind of built in at this section. Somebody obviously at some stage has boxed it out, and when we come to redo all the outside of the boat next year we are going to rebuild that section, so we're not too worried about this. But what we do want to do is clear this space so that we can put the water heater, so that we can have a hot shower and wash the pots. We want that on here. So it means we need to move all the electrics basically up to that back section there. So we can get rid of this, all this bit of a cupboard, and free up the space. It's kind of just going to be a suck it and see really. I'm going to start unscrewing things, see what moves, see what comes off. I reckon all this is going to come off easy enough. That's the old solar controller, we don't need that anyway. Let's just start unscrewing things, see what happens. These are obviously all the switches, so we're going to need to definitely relocate them. I might just need to make up a little bit of boxing or something just to mount this in once we're done, but we'll see. Just for now, let's unhook all that. That can sit down there. What I'm not really wanting to do, if at all possible, is disturb a lot of the wiring. Just kind of really want to pop it back in place as it is. It'll keep life simple for now. To be honest, we don't really use that inverter very much at all. I have occasionally charged a couple of the batteries up for the power tools with it, but I don't think it's really powerful enough, and to be honest it kind of half charges them and then it sometimes gets face on and shuts down. This is where all the negative feeds from all the power circuits come back to, and then they go down to the battery, which we need to take off as well. As I was expecting, it's not taking the radiator to take it apart. Main thing is I'm trying to do it fairly carefully so I'm not disturbing too much in there. So, I think before I can really do anything much more there, I'm going to have to get some gloves on, pull this insulation out, give all this all a good hoovering up, get it all nicely cleared up, and then we can look at remounting these onto there. As if by magic then, the electrics have all moved. I did sort of start filming it, and then to be honest I packed in filming it, because it's not really a vlog about electrics anyway, and all you were really seeing is the back of my head for most of it, and while I were faffing about uncoiling cables and things. It does need a little bit of tidy up time on these wires, but as we well know, Dawn's very good at tidy up time. So when she gets in from work, that'll be her number one job, other than cooking food and things like that. We now just need to finish off framing this section here, basically the same as I framed all that, because we want to have a nice sturdy board on there so that the boiler will mount to it. I suppose then I better get the saw and everything back in action and get going with that. Framework finished then. You will notice, if you're really observant, that this timber is different to the timber I've been using earlier on, and that's because I ran out. But being the tight Yorkshireman and ever resourceful, I've managed to find a few bits of timber that were lying around that I've been able to chop to the right sizes, and that's done the job perfect. Next job then is to get the insulation into the areas that need insulating. Obviously the windows and directly around the windows we can't insulate, there's no room for it there. But things like this sort of section, these sections, under the gunnels and sort of in front of the gunnels, they're all going to get insulated with that Kingspan. Same as we did near the beginning of the rebuild for most of the boat, but obviously we couldn't do this section at the time. So I'll not bother showing you that, because if you've watched them videos, you'll know how boring it is and you'll have already seen it. And if you've not watched them videos, scoot back to the beginning of the project and have a look. So insulation in, we'll come back with some plywood and we'll start making it look pretty. We're now jumping forward to the following day. Yesterday I did finish off insulating all the areas on this side that we wanted to get insulated, so I was ready to crack on and get all the plywood up today. So I went to the timber yard, no plywood in the right thickness. Went to a different timber yard, equally no plywood in the right thickness. And it does seem, looking around on the forums, there is a bit of a shortage of all manners of timbers and building materials and lots of other things. Some people are telling you it's to do with Brexit, which for those in foreign countries that's to do with Britain leaving the EU and all manner of politics. But seeing as this seems to actually be a worldwide shortage and the price of things have absolutely skyrocketed, in essence the sheets of plywood that we were buying sort of 6 or 8 months ago at around £7 or £8 a sheet is now over £20 a sheet when you can get hold of it. It seems more to do with COVID and things like that. But anyway, it means, short of actually just spending the day driving around looking for the plywood, which is just wasting time, what I'm going to do is get on and finish prepping all this side of the boat instead, and then we're all ready. As soon as we can get some ply, we can do it all. So there's things like, still in this corner, there's a million wires. And yeah, I do mean a million. They're all from the old electric system that obviously as we stripped the boat we disconnected, but basically the wires are all still there and sort of dangling down into the engine bay. So I'm going to get rid of all them, tidy up all these bits same as I've done that side, and then finish off all the framing down this side of the boat. Might even look at getting a bit of the framework and ceiling framework in. We'll see how that goes, because there is also, we must confess, there's just these last 2 windows that we never actually got round to taking out, cleaning up and resealing like we did with all the others, so we can crack on with that. So it's probably going to mean that we're more doing just the framework, and then we'll see if we can actually get some plywood and get that up as well. I'm going to crack on then. Wire stripping. As I start taking all this lot out, I know there's only basically the wires that are on the back of that switch there. They're the ones that are still wired to the ignition of the engine. All the rest are the old fuse board and old sockets and things, and the battery isolator. That's all defunct. I know I can just pull all that out. I just need to be careful I don't go disturbing this one. So as I'm disconnecting the wires, I've gone to pull that board out to free up the space, and it's just caught on this kind of top step, which obviously we knew was in need of a little bit of TLC, shall we say. But you can see it's actually quite a bit worse than we thought, and although it wasn't on the to-do list for today, it's now something that I'm definitely going to have to look at sooner rather than later. So as ever, instead of ticking jobs off the list, we're actually adding new jobs onto the list. I think this just shows then you can't really plan anything when you're doing a boat rebuild. Because obviously I started today with the intention of getting 3 plywood sheets and fitting them down the inside of the boat. Couldn't get them sheets, so I decided to do some framework on the other side, which meant I'd got a little bit of an old cupboard to clear out, which had got a few wires in it. Yeah, that's them few wires that I've pulled out from inside that cupboard and what led under the engine bay. And it has unearthed a great deal of other issues, like that rotten step. So I think it's time to tidy up all this wiring, clear up in the boat, and then have a look, see where we go from here. Because today's definitely a day of more questions than answers. Now I've had my brew and tidied up, I think I've decided we're probably best leaving this episode here, because I think we've now just got more questions than we've got answers. We've obviously not got the plywood to finish off this side like we'd hoped, and obviously we started to strip this. It has just really raised lots of questions. Like we said, the idea was to rebuild this back end next year when we do all the outside, but the more I've stripped it back, the more I've found there's lots of loose bits and lots of bits that are at fault. There's some rust down here, so I'm thinking, should we now just crack on and rebuild that before finishing off all the plywood? But that's a decision for Dawn to make, so I'm going to have a word with her later and see what we decide. You might have also spotted a couple of bits around the boat as we've been sort of showing you this episode, and you've thought, I don't recall seeing them doing that. Well, there are odd little bits that we've been doing. I'll point at the tap for a start, that we've not actually brought to you yet. So I think the next episode is going to be me and Dawn doing a little tour around the boat, just making sure everyone's up to speed and showing you exactly what we've got done, what's fitted, what's working, and perhaps more crucially, what we've still got to do and what the plans are going forward, including what we do down here. So hopefully you've liked this video, you've given us the thumbs up, not the thumbs down. I'm sure you're already subscribed to the channel and you've dinged the little bell, which means you get notifications each time we put a video on. All that's left for me to do then is say ta-ta. See you later folks. Bye bye.